8.5% unemployment. You think that's appropriate for a candidate to identify with the unemployed when no time in his life has he felt economic insecurity? He's the son of the head of a U.S. auto company. I don't see that's relevant. He's ever felt economically insecure, has he?
I think anytime you go into a job and you're the last one there, you're worried about getting pink slip. I think the fact of the matter is this is a guy who is truly done virtually all his success is attributed to the hard work that he did and put in. This is a country in which somebody can start and have that kind of great success. And to begrudge him now for having been successful, I think is kind of anti-American, don't you?
No, I just wonder why a fellow who's been to boarding school and has gone to elite universities and never had a sweat in his life, never had to worry in his life about putting a meal on the table, should go out there and offer himself as some sort of Uriah Heep. Is that fair?
I don't think he's done any of what you suggested he's
character.
Done. I think what he's done is talked about the fact that the important thing in America is anybody can participate in the dream. What he wants to do is return hope to a country that has lost hope under a president that's ruined the economy. And I think what he's talking about is reviving the soul of America.
Governor Sununu, just one last point before we let you go, just to clarify something you said earlier. You described the attacks on Mitt Romney's time at Bain Capital as socialist attacks. What I was asking about was the attacks by Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich. Are you saying they're socialists?
I'm saying that the tone of the attacks coming out of Gingrich and Perry don't sound Republican. They sound more like guys coming out of the left wing.
Governor Sununu, thank you very much. We'll be checking in with those campaigns for a response to your comments tonight, and we're really grateful to have had you here. Thank you, sir. Let's go check in with our NBC News political director, Chuck Todd now. Chuck?
Well, Rachel, I just want to, obviously we have this battle for second place, and as we're noticing right now, when it comes in, it's where is Paul sort of overperforming. You know, we warned you that in the entrance poll in Iowa, he had sort of been overstated. Well, in this case, I think it looks like maybe the exit poll understated Paul's support. And where we see him doing particularly well is in Manchester. Right here, it's where most of the vote actually comes from, and he is walloping right now. When it looks, he is walloping Huntsman there. 11 points. There you go. We've done this before. Go ahead, Rachel.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the only reason for which I would do that, and that is that NBC News can now project that Ron Paul will finish second in the New Hampshire primary tonight. Mitt Romney, the projected winner tonight in New Hampshire. Ron Paul, the projected second-place finisher right now with 14% of the vote in. Romney is at 36% of the vote. Ron Paul at 24% of the vote. But again, the first and second-place finishers now projected as Mitt Romney and Ron Paul, respectively, by NBC News. And we're back to our political director, Chuck Todd. Chuck, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine, and I can tell you this is the Romney folks are ecstatic that it's Paul in second place, that it's not Santorum, Huntsman, or Gingrich. It's somebody that they believe, for instance, the Paul campaign is practically skipping the state of Florida and that primary in the 31st, so this is perhaps the ideal result. And where it came from and where Huntsman is falling short is actually where McCain did really well in 2000, that is Concord. This is a Democratic county, a Democratic area, but Paul and Huntsman are neck and neck there. Huntsman needed to out-poll Paul with these independent voters. That's where a lot of the independents are coming in. He didn't do it. And then in Manchester, where there is sort of the libertarian independent, that's where Paul almost topped him nearly 2-1 in this battle for second place. Of course, Romney, and I should note on these all the green that's on our screen, Romney is winning a bunch of places. In fact, what we have green up in the center of the state, a little north of both Concord and Manchester, those are places that McCain won 4 years ago. So Romney's victory is a pretty complete victory and a huge improvement over where he was 4 years ago. But I just go back politically. If the Romney campaign could have scripted this any better, they couldn't have scripted it better with Ron Paul being called second place this early. Really sort of takes the wind out of the sails, particularly of a John Huntsman, who staked everything on pulling a surprise here, but also, frankly, Santorum and Gingrich, who neither one of them were able to consolidate the conservative vote. Neither one of them is in third place in Manchester. This is where Pat Buchanan brought his pitchforks, Rachel.
Chuck, in terms of looking at that Paul second-place finish, obviously, as you're describing, the Romney campaign very excited about that. They do not see Ron Paul as a threat. Is there any worry in the Republican Party among the Romney campaign or anywhere else that the big votes we're seeing for Ron Paul, both in Iowa and New Hampshire, represent sort of a hole in the Republican electorate, a group of people that is not being spoken to but is motivated enough to get out there and cast a vote?
Well, they are nervous enough about it that there's been this sort of non-aggression pact between Romney and Paul. If you've noticed, Mitt Romney had very kind words to say about Ron Paul. Refers to him in the NBC Facebook. Like, well, Dr. Paul, you're the constitutionalist here. Pays him. What the Paul campaign will say is the respect that they believe Ron Paul deserves. And look at what we saw today. Ron Paul came to Mitt Romney's defense on all of these Bain Capital attacks. So there really is, Ron Paul is turning into Mitt Romney's not-so-secret weapon, because if he is just eating up a chunk of the sort of libertarian and, frankly, Tea Party, sort of that core original Tea Party support that isn't just anti-government, it isn't just anti-big government, but also anti-big business, big anything. And Paul's taking that up. That's less vote there for a conservative, even a conservative populist like Newt Gingrich is trying to sort of reframe his campaign. So, like I said, it's a huge boon to Romney. And then think about Florida. Paul's going to skip it. He's going to concentrate on those caucus states. And there is a concern in the Romney campaign that Paul could go third party. They don't want that. And so one of the things they do want Paul to do is get the delegates that he wants and let him have some influence on the platform and at the convention in Tampa.
Wow, it is an appeasement strategy from here on out. Chuck,
yes,
thank you.
Exactly.
This is amazing. I mean, if you think about it, we have seen Ron Paul mount incredibly effective attacks against Gingrich and against Santorum when nobody else is bothering to do it against Santorum. But Chuck's right, we haven't seen him go after Romney.
Which is why I don't buy that he is the so-called left candidate in the race or the moderate that a lot say. He's defending Bain, he's defending Romney, and he's really become Romney's guy to attack the attackers from the right. Though he is anti-war on foreign stuff, a lot of questions on where he is domestic and in this race. And I think that clearly now Romney is going to try to walk all the way to the nomination and probably will. But tonight I say what I said before. The potential moderate would have been Huntsman. By him getting a low vote, it gives that moderate part of the Republican Party almost a death knell, because it won't pick up in South Carolina or Florida. If Ron Paul is respected by Romney and given a major play in Tampa, they will not have a voice there. And this Bain story and his quotes, even I'm corrected by my colleague, Chris Matthews, even if he says, I wish I were able, I like to be able, which is not as bad as I like to, but it's still insensitive, is going to follow him because Gingrich is going to run it in ads. He's already put 1.6 million on the air in South Carolina.
So who becomes the anti-Romney candidate? Now, the Patch in South Carolina, which is owned by Ariana Huffington, is reporting that Gingrich has reached out to Santorum to offer his endorsement if he drops out of the race, leaving no doubt that Santorum is becoming the clear anti-Romney. This is not likely to happen until after Newt loses South Carolina. So what we're seeing tonight with a poor finish by both Newt Gingrich and Santorum, there has to be a coalescing of the conservatives if they're going to mount a charge, and it's going to have to come pretty fast, I think, because this is a very strong showing by Mitt Romney. And
a strong showing by Ron Paul.
You know, it actually historically is not a strong showing by Mitt Romney, not a bit. The average winning percentage in the New Hampshire primary is 39.
Yes.
This is, if it stays where it is now, if it doesn't go up higher, John McCain won at 49 in 2000 and did not get the nomination. I mean, I can recite for you higher numbers. Hillary Clinton got 39 last time around. John Kerry got 38. Gary Hart got 37, and he's not from Massachusetts. So here you have the Massachusetts
got 37
guy.
last time.
Yeah, okay, but look at this is the Massachusetts guy, okay, who no one's discounting. I don't know why. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm the only one who's discounting his number. You got to discount it by a minimum of 10. Then you have to look at the fraud in the campaign, the Republican fraud, which is the libertarian libertarian Ron Paul, who is not a candidate for president. He is not going to get the nomination. He is not going to be given a prominent speaking role at a Republican convention. They can't have a guy up there saying what he says. He is in there to push his ideas and for whatever individual reasons he has. So if you take Ron Paul out of this, and if you take out all those independent voters who went out there today for Ron Paul, what would have happened to Huntsman? Huntsman is the real second here. He came in the real second. He came in strong in that. And so if you look at these margins for the Massachusetts candidate who's running there for the second time, this is an unimpressive number. Historically unimpressive number.
But McCain underperformed in 2008 as opposed to previous years.
Underperformed by a couple of points. But remember, Massachusetts, I'm going to keep saying this all night, Massachusetts, the Massachusetts guy wins in New Hampshire.
It was the Globe.
There's only one Massachusetts guy who lost in New Hampshire, and he was running against an incumbent president in New Hampshire. That's Teddy Kennedy.
Okay.
Every other Massachusetts guy wins New Hampshire easily, and we discounted it historically. We never cared when the Massachusetts guy won New Hampshire.
Let me just ask Steve, how important is it that Ron Paul's locked up second place here? We do not know what the final percentage vote is going to be among these candidates, but we are projecting first and second for Romney and Ron Paul.
This went down exactly like Mitt Romney wanted it to go down tonight. He wanted the early call. He wanted, as soon as the polls closed, for the networks to make the call saying that he had won. Ron Paul in second place. I think it's a disappointing finish for John Huntsman in third place. He bet the farm on New Hampshire. He wasn't shooting for third. But I think the really good news, Rachel, for Mitt Romney going forward is none of these candidates, even though for most of them they have no plausible path to be the nominee of the party, none of them are getting out of the race. And I think that increases the likelihood that Mitt Romney can win in South Carolina. And I think if Mitt Romney goes 3-0, I think he is the de facto nominee of the party. He's certainly the de facto nominee of the party if he goes 4-0 no later than Florida.
Well, let me put a little news into this discussion, which is that the Huntsman campaign has now told NBC News that John Huntsman will not be getting out of the race. At the beginning of the night tonight, we were talking about how important it was that John Huntsman finish first, second, or third. We now know that he will not finish first or second. NBC projecting Mitt Romney and Ron Paul in first and second place in New Hampshire. But the Huntsman campaign saying they are not getting out. It should be noted that when they started running that ad, that Country First ad, taking the John McCain slogan from 2008 off of John Huntsman's strong showing in the Sunday morning Meet the Press debate, when they made that ad, they did a money bomb on their website. They said we need to raise $100,000 to run it. They exceeded their totals, but they not only bought airtime in New Hampshire to run that ad, they did buy airtime in South Carolina. Plus, they've got more than a handful of staffers in South Carolina, and apparently as of tonight, they are planning on keeping on.
In South Carolina, Huntsman's got some credible people with him. He's got Richard Quinn, who is referred to be one of the best political consultants in the state of South Carolina, also is connected to the McCain campaign. You can speak to Quinn. He's a good one.
Listen, he's a terrific talent, and John Huntsman has a very talented team of people that are around him. But he's going down to South Carolina trying to take votes away from Mitt Romney, likely by campaigning in coastal Carolina, with a lot of those northeastern transplants have moved down to Myrtle Beach, to Hilton Head, to Kiowa Island. And his strategy is to try to deny Mitt Romney a victory, being part of a coalition that can pull enough out of him, both on the coastal part of the state and then up in the mountainous region of the state. But I do think that unless John Huntsman's super PAC is funded with $10, $20 million, there's a significant financial commitment made on his behalf. I do think he'll be losing altitude, and I think he'll increasingly be a non-factor.
But I think Steve is right. If all of them stay in, it only helps Mitt Romney.
Sure it does.
And I think that it ends the way he wants tonight. If Paul is number two, I think also the thing that's going to work for Willie Romney is that he is able to make the argument. I agree with Lawrence, it's not an outrageously high number, but he will be able to say, unlike the others, I won Iowa and New Hampshire, so he gives the perception that he's unstoppable, and no one went into the third primary being able to say that.
But the tough thing here is, no matter who mounts the charge against Romney in South Carolina, who's got the resources to do anything in Florida? And the answer there is none of them.
I think it'll be interesting to see if we hear a different tone tonight or a different campaign message from Mitt Romney when he gives his speech. We can see his wife there and his sons, all 5 of his sons, for the first time. His son Matt, who is a doctor who's doing a residency in Utah, has not been on the campaign trail thus far, but all 5 Romney sons are there tonight behind Mrs. Romney. Let's go to Andrea, who's in Manchester right now.
I just talked to John Weaver, a top advisor to John Huntsman, and they say, as you've been reporting, they are going on to South Carolina. Their point is that John Huntsman, when he makes his